everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back. I'm so excited for this video today, guys. I'm talking about one of my favorite books. Not favorite books of all time, but just one of those books that I love so much. And also I'm daydreaming about the amazing movie that it would make. So what's not to like, right? As you saw in the title, I'm doing the Adapt a Book tag, which was originally created by Seeking Stories. I'll link their video down below. And I first saw it on Alan of the Library of Alexandria's channel over the summer. And not gonna lie, guys, I saw that video and my brain immediately went, that's the perfect book. You have to do it for this book. And as you also saw in the title and the thumbnail, that book is Soulless by Gail Carriger. I have loved this book for years. I've talked about it a lot on my channel. I actually just reread it last week to have it super fresh in my memory to make this video. I still love it just as much, and let's dive into these questions and talk about the dream movie that will never be made, but I would love. I'm going to do a really brief summary of this book in case you haven't read it. Not any spoilers or anything, but essentially it's the story of Alexia, who is 26 and a spinster, and also soulless. So in this supernatural universe, you've got your vampires and your werewolves and your ghosts, and then there's also these other people who are fully human, except they don't have souls. And when they touch a vampire or a werewolf, they revert to being human. They're very powerful, but they're very rare and relatively unknown. Well, everyone knows about vampires and werewolves, but no one really knows about these soulless people. So that's Alexia's situation. This is it's a paranormal romance with mystery and steampunk. It's a steampunk mystery with paranormal romance. I don't know which it is, but of course there's a love interest, and that's Lord Connell Macon, who is a werewolf. At the beginning of the book, they're both sort of too headstrong, and I wouldn't say they hate each other, they just really don't get along. And over the course of the book, there's of course mystery elements. Werewolves and vampires keep showing up mysteriously dead, and new werewolves and vampires keep showing up mysteriously not knowing anything about the supernatural, really. Of course, they have to solve the mystery together. So, let's get into these questions. The questions are very long for this tag, so I think I'm gonna read them out. So, excuse me looking down at my phone. Congratulations, you're attempting to adapt a favorite book into a movie, and a film studio is interested in financially backing your adaptation, but they want a brief summary of the story in 25 words or less. Give it all you've got in no more than 25 words. I worked hard on this one, guys. I have to read it because it's exactly 25 words, but I promise I'm not going to read all my answers. Here we go. Eligible bachelor werewolf Connell and soulless spinster, age 26, Alexia, solve supernatural mystery and realize they don't hate each other, involving puddings, parasols, and passion. I don't even know if that's a good, I feel like I've left out so much in that description, but if we're really trying to get the key details in a short 25-word blurb, that's what I could come up with. If you've read this book, let me know how you would blurb that, because there's so many elements and I did not know how to include them all. Question 2. You've secured funding, but the budget dictates that a character has to be cut. Who's out? Note: no cheating, this must be a named character, not Goblin number 2. I feel a little bit like I'm cheating with this character, but Squire Loontwill, Alexia's stepfather, really does not contribute much to this story whatsoever. Most of what we see from him is him reading the paper at breakfast or thinking about the pros cons of his stepdaughter marrying a werewolf for his stepdaughter marrying a duke. They're the same person, but he's is it better to have a duke in the family or worse to have a werewolf? I don't know. So I feel like that role could be given to Alexia's mother without losing much from the story. So he's gotta go. He's not that interesting. And everyone else feels way more essential. There was no one else I could think of where it was oh, if I get rid of you, I don't lose part of the plot or part of the feeling. So bye-bye. Question 3. Which scene is going to be the most difficult to adapt from book to movie script? This isn't a specific scene, it's more the general tone of the narration. Because it's not first-person narrated. We don't hear from Alexia's point of view exactly, but it is very focused in on her and her experiences. So we do get a lot of what her thoughts are on what's going on around her and how she's reacting to things, and I don't really know how you would work that in, because I feel like a voiceover, like inner monologue narration, to me it's kind of cheesy. I don't know if that would work, but I also don't like the idea of cutting away to her writing in her diary about it or something, so I don't know how I would convey that from book to script. The best possible answer I have for that, I guess, is like an Office style thing where you get cutaways to people reacting, but that I don't know if that really fits with the genre, so. Question 4. Your script is complete. Which scene do you anticipate being the most difficult to film? All of the men transforming into werewolves and supernatural ability stuff, we know from television that that's doable. That's no problem. So there's a scene where there's a wingback chair, there's a 6'4" Scottish werewolf in human form sitting in the chair. We have Alexia, a repeatedly described as curvy heroine, wearing full corsetry and bustle, who is somehow sitting in his lap, making out with him, and in book form, it's delightful, it's adorable, it's like their first proper makeout, or second, you know, it's one of the early scenes where they're really like starting to feel that passion for each other. It's lovely. But I'm not an expert in historical dress or anything, but knowing what I know, I just don't see that translating to visual medium. I can see how that could be very passionate and lovely to experience, but I don't know how you would translate that to something you're seeing and getting those emotions. I feel like if you're looking at it, it would just be like, oh man, that's so weird. Why is her bustle pushed up all the way against her back? Or like, how is any of this even working? So I have no idea how that would be filmed. But it needs to be, because that scene is amazing. Question 5. What themes are vital to the story which must not be lost in translation? The first theme I want to mention is more of an atmosphere than a theme exactly, but it's the whole sense of this society where vampires and werewolves are integrated, but they're not. There's like, they're part of society, but people are still sort of uneasy, and hand in hand with that, there's this society which is very concerned with propriety, and our heroine and the main characters in the main plot are sort of teetering on that edge of propriety and like always 1 second away from slipping into scandal. So that sort of theme atmosphere is really important. And the second one is Alexia's general attitude towards the world, which is very much one of like a, hey, I know I'm not super conventionally attractive, I know I'm not probably gonna make a good marriage, but like, I'm gonna make the most of my life. I'm not going to mope about it. I'm going to wear clothes that I like, and when I go to a ball where there's not sufficient food being served, I don't care if it's rude. I'm ordering a tea from the butler. Like, her whole attitude towards life, I like to see that theme. Question 6. Casting has begun. Which actors are playing your main characters? Why? So, in the books, Alexia is half Italian. She has an Italian father, and half English, that's her mother, and this means that she is, by Victorian standards, unfortunately tan, has an unfortunately big nose, and is unfortunately curvy in a sexy but not necessarily stylish way. I thought about how you could translate on that on the screen, and I tried to think of actresses who would work well. I want to make a little tweak to make it work better, I think, and I want to make her father black, not Italian. And I think that'll work better for a few reasons. 1, I have an actress in mind who I think would manage her character really well. And 2, I think visually you could incorporate people of color in the cast in a way that makes being a person of color in Victorian London seem similarly exotic to being Italian in Victorian London. And I feel like that could work because this is already a paranormal steampunk setting. There's a lot of changes being made and liberties being taken. So I think if you make that adjustment, it would visually highlight Alexia's differentness from the rest of society, while still conveying that same sense of like, this actually isn't that big of a deal. People are just being kind of dramatic about it. So I think that would work. I'm not positive. But the main reason I want to do that is so that Taraji P. Henson can play her, because I think she can pull off the right balance of brainy and smart and funny, but also kind of emotionally vulnerable and not really too sure of what she's doing. Like, she knows the scientific side of how sex works, but also she's kind of like, I'm confused, I'm not really sure about feelings, I'm unexperienced here, and I think she could really pull that off. Then I think there's only one person who comes to mind for me to play the incredibly tall, the impressively buff, the attractively rugged werewolf Scottish Lord Connell Macon, Earl of Wolsey, and it's Sam Heughan. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that name right, but the guy from Outlander, basically. I actually haven't even seen Outlander, but I've seen little clips and I think he could do it. I think especially if he was buffer and had a bit of a beard maybe. Honestly, this was such a hard question. I did not expect it to be, but I started thinking about it and like describing these characters to my partner as I was trying to brainstorm answers for this, and I realized I know no actors. And also maybe just that I don't like imagine characters as actors, so I have a mental image of the character and I'm like, no one looks like that, but I've tried to make it fit. Question 7, who is going to direct your book to movie adaptation and why? So for directors, I need Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, purely based on What We Do in the Shadows. I think they are the perfect directors to get the tone of like supernatural, that's part of why this came to mind, but also funny and like serious. I think they can convey the serious mystery. I have faith in them. But I know they can do the funny, and that's, I think, the part that's key here, is finding that balance between like the serious situations and the passionate romance, but also not taking it too seriously. It's very delicate, and I think they could walk that line so well. And then there wasn't like a question to properly put this under, so I'm putting it here, but the costumes and general design need to be by Milena Canonero, who did the costumes for Marie Antoinette. And I want them to be historically accurate in construction for the most part, with some changes, if that makes sense, and then a more vibrant color palette, I think. And I think she could do it perfectly. I think she could convey that sense of like fairly historically accurate, but making changes where it's appropriate for the plot and where it conveys something appropriate for the movie. Not just because someone's like, oh my god, corset is torture device, because they're not, or like, oh my god, we have to have the heroine's hair in that like half up ponytail thing. It's like, no, you certainly don't. She'll wear a period appropriate bun, and we'll have some other changes that actually convey meaning to the story, not just random stuff for laziness. And I think she could do that beautifully in beautiful colors. Question 8 is, what is the ideal length for this film, keeping in mind that most movie studios won't release a movie longer than 3 hours? I don't think it needs to be super long. Like, I don't know what a standard movie length is because I barely watch movies because I have no attention span whatsoever. But like, I think an hour and a half, probably 2 hours would be my ideal because I like details. I like a slightly longer movie. That sounds so contradictory. I just told you I have no attention span, but like, I want to get immersed into it. I want to get immersed into this world. But it's not a super complicated plot, and I don't think it needs to be like a hugely long movie. Much as I would like to say it should be like a 6-episode miniseries, this isn't the adapt a book to a miniseries tag, so let's go with a 2-hour movie. Question 9. Alas, the movie studio dictates that your adaptation is too long. A scene must go. Which one's the victim? And this scene is cute, and it's steamy, and I like it, and I get why it's in the book. But there's a scene fairly far in where both Alexia and Connell have been captured. It's the full moon, so he is only stopped from turning into a werewolf when he's actively touching her. So they're in a cell together, he's naked, she's touching him. Of course there's makeouts, of course it's cute, but it just doesn't feel right to me. The whole time I was reading that scene, I was like, no, this isn't really true to your characters. I get that you're passionately in love with each other, but you can be passionately in love and still recognize that you're in immediate danger and need to address that before having a makeout. So I would cut that scene and replace it with like one passionate kiss when they're safe. Question 10. Pushback time. As the film's producer, you're allowed to select one scene which can never be cut. Which scene do you choose? Now, I tried to choose a scene where it could plausibly be cut, if that makes sense. I didn't choose like a major plot point scene because obviously those aren't going to be cut. Obviously you need those. So the scene I've gone to is a scene between Connell and Professor Lyle, who's his beta and his second in the werewolf pack, and his general like assistant and friend. And Connell has just been at a dinner party the night before where Alexia was there, and he's made a total mess of it. He's nervous and he doesn't know how to react, and he expects her to make the next move. They've had like one kiss and that's it. But he expects her to make the next move, so he just ignores her and doesn't talk to her. And then realizes that she's really mad at him because obviously he's being really rude and ignoring her and not talking to her, and she thinks that like, oh, he thought he made a mistake and he's not actually interested in me. Connell has this lovely scene with Professor Lyle the next day where Lyle sort of makes him realize that he's made a mistake, and it's a really lovely little window into Connell being emotionally vulnerable and not knowing what to do, which is something I really appreciate about this movie in general, is that both the characters are ones who on the surface seem very like brash and I know what's going on and I'm in control, and that's why they clash initially. And then throughout the entire romance plot we just see that they're both kind of unsure and vulnerable and not sure what to do about this. And I think that was especially good to see from Connell's character because he's a high-powered man in like political and like nobility society. He's an alpha werewolf. He's a very imposing, like sure of himself type of person. So it was really good to get that window into him not having any fucking clue how to talk to a girl. Alright, so that's all the questions. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know, have you read Soulless or anything else of Gail Carriger's? Do you like it? Do you not? As per usual, I'm not going to tag anyone explicitly, but if this sounds like an interesting tag to you, you should totally do it. If you liked this video, please hit the like button down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching!